Hey, what's the deal, YouTube? It's your girl, Miss Honey. Welcome back to the channel, you guys. It is your girl, Miss Honey, here for or with another video, I should say. Happy Juneteenth to everyone. Juneteenth 2020. Wanted to come in and talk a little bit about Juneteenth and why it's hitting a little bit different this year than it has in the past. In the past, we have barely recognized Juneteenth, in my opinion. There's been, some talk, a few people here and there on social media that dropped memes and images and, screenshots, and there are some small parades and celebrations that have popped off across the United States. Very small, not anything too big per se. This has been sort of um, a sleeper celebration, in my opinion. I've heard people say Juneteenth. I know personally, I never really stopped and thought about it or chewed on it. I knew what it was all about, but it wasn't something that was widely celebrated on a large scale. And so it's easy for things like that to sort of fly up under the radar. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and why Juneteenth 2020 is hitting a little bit different this year as opposed to Juneteenth 2019, 2018, 2017, 2016, so on and so forth. You get where I'm going with this. So, before we get going really good, I want to thank everyone who tuned in to my last upload, which was sort of my weigh in on the Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, as it pertains to voting and how I was just really feeling about everything. Because really, it's only been a couple of months that everything is kind of snowballed to this place where we are in full on revolution, social revolution and an equality revolution. Um, it's only been a couple of 2-3 months that this thing has sort of snowballed and come to this place. And so I wanted to kind of download my feelings about those things. And the video was like an hour and 20 minutes long, and you guys watched it and enjoyed it and commented on it and tweeted me about it and DM'd me about it. And I just want to say thank you to each and every person that took the time to really listen, to absorb, to weigh in, to share your own thoughts and feelings and concerns as it pertains to you and your family during this really, really weird period of time. Also want to invite you, if you are new to my channel, to hit that subscription button as well as the notification bell next to it. I'd love to have you give me a thumbs up. Everybody knows that I consider that like a car horn on the way by while I'm sitting on the front porch. You know what I'm saying? You're throwing your hand up in the supermarket. It's like saying, hey, Miss Honey, okay? And of course, comment down below. Y'all know I talk to y'all down below. You guys know I respond and retort down below. And of course, you can always hit me up on Twitter, on IG. Check out those links in the description bar as well. But without further ado, let's talk a little bit about why Juneteenth 2020 is hitting a little bit different this year. First of all, I want us to just talk really briefly about what exactly Juneteenth is. I've seen quite a few people sort of try to give synopsis, which ironically I saw a ton of Caucasian commentators on YouTube talking about what Juneteenth is and what it means. And I was like, what? Sincerely, I was just like, wow, like it's such a weird thing to me, in my opinion, for a Caucasian person to weigh in on. Um, don't ask me why. I just think it's odd. Anyway, let's talk about the history of Juneteenth. We're just going to do this really quick. Juneteenth is the oldest nationally celebrated commemoration of the ending of slavery in the United States. Dating back to 1865, it was on June 19th that the Union soldiers, led by Major General Gordon Granger, landed at Galveston, Texas, with news that the war had ended and that the enslaved were now free. Note that this was 2.5 years after President Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation, which had become official January 1st, 1863. The Emancipation Proclamation had little impact on Texans due to the minimal number of Union troops to enforce the new executive order. However, so let's just stop for a second. The executive order was passed, but they're saying they had a minimal number of troops to enforce the order, to enforce the law. Now, we're not going to get too deep into Lincoln and emancipation. We're just not going to do that right here and right now. It's too much. It's a rabbit hole. Remember, slavery and the enslavement is an entrenchment. And our families, our grandmothers, grandfathers, that legacy is a part of that entrenchment. And what we're seeing now in 2020 is the emergence out of that entrenchment. Even if it's just a small bit, we are slowly but surely, I feel, through revolution, protests, and unapologetically confronting the situation, becoming slowly untrenched. I think that's correct. However, with the surrender of General Lee in April 1865 and the arrival of General Granger's regiment, the forces were finally strong enough to influence and to overcome the resistance. Later attempts to explain this 2.5-year delay in the receipt of this important news have yielded several versions. We're not going to go through all the versions, but I will have to tell you that of the three listed, one, that the messenger that was bringing the news was murdered to deliberately withhold the information. That's something I can believe. Also, federal troops wanted the slave owners to reap the benefits of one last cotton harvest. I can absolutely believe that. President Lincoln's authority over the rebellious states was in question. Whatever the reasons, the conditions in Texas remain status quo, well beyond what was statutory. Let's just talk about what the proclamation said. It's basically an order, a general order. General Order number 3 states that the people of Texas are informed that in accordance with the proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves, and the connection heretofore existing between them becomes that between employer and hired labor. So you can still work, but you have to get paid for it now, basically. The reactions to this profound news range from pure shock and to immediate jubilation, hence the celebrations, while many lingered to learn of this new employer-employee relationship. Many left before these offers were completely off the lips of their former masters, attesting to the varying conditions on the plantations and the realization of freedom. Even with nowhere to go, many felt that leaving the plantation would be their first grasp of freedom. North was a logical destination for many. It represented true freedom, while the desire to reach family members in neighboring states drove some into Louisiana, Arkansas, Oklahoma. Remember, families were split up and splintered. And so if you were able to get to the North, getting this information meant that you could go back to the South, hopefully freely, and try to look for your mom, your dad, your sister, your brother, that type of thing. Reconnect with family as much as you can. While we were entrenched as a people, we were splintered as well in more ways than one, mentally, physically, logistically, Anyway, so that's basically the gist of what the history of Juneteenth is all about. And of course, we like to come in, we like to pull out some keywords for me that stand out. Hopefully you guys can rock with me on this. I want to first just go over the definition of emancipation. Emancipation, which is a noun, the fact or process of being set free from legal, social, or political restrictions. Liberation, the emancipation of feminist ideas, is a good example. Some of the synonyms of emancipation, we love synonyms. Freeing is one. Liberation, liberating, release, releasing, discharge, unchaining, unfettering, unshackling, untying, unyoking, uncaging, unbridling, freedom, liberty, manumission, disenthrallment, enthrallment. Whew, big word. Let's talk about liberation. Liberation also is a noun, the act of setting someone free from imprisonment, slavery, or oppression. Release. A good example is the liberation of all political prisoners. Some of the synonyms for liberation is freeing, release, discharge, deliverance, salvation, rescue, relief, extrication, loosing, unloosing, unshackling, unfettering, unchaining, untying, unbinding, freedom, liberty, emancipation, ransom, manumission, disenthrallment, equality, enfranchisement, independence. Okay? It's powerful. It really is. It's powerful because according to the paperwork sent down from Lincoln's office, even though it took 2 years to get there for whatever reason, says that you're free. It says that you have been emancipated. You've been given the same rights as everyone else. You are liberated. You have liberation. You have been released. You've been discharged. You've been delivered. You've been saved. You've been unchained. You've been untied. You've been, emancipated, disenthralled. Sounds really great. Moving forward to 2020, you realize that although you have a measure of freedom, some of the things are eerily similar, and some things are completely different. Okay. So let's talk about what's so different now. I mean, people are still asking for your papers. People are still asking for your papers, because back in the day, during the slavery time, if you saw a black person, North or South, and you see them walking around on the street. Let's say they went to the store or something like that. They had to have papers. And those papers had to say whether they were a free man or if they were a slave, who they belonged to. In order for a slave or a black person to travel freely, they had to make sure they had their paperwork, you know. And we're still seeing today where people are asking for your papers essentially when they say, what are you doing here? What is your name? What apartment do you live in here? Prove that this is your car. Prove that you're supposed to be on this street. Prove that you're supposed to be cutting your own grass. Prove that this is your home. Prove that this is your child, that you're supposed to have this child. Prove it. Let's see your papers. And we're getting it not just from a law enforcement standpoint. I mean, the number of Karen and Ken videos out there have, to me, in my opinion, seems to have increased exponentially. We're seeing them dropping out all over the place, where ordinary, regular, run-of-the-mill, mediocre individuals, Caucasoid individuals, are asking for your papers essentially. Prove that you're supposed to be here. Prove that you own this. Prove that you have the right, okay, to live in the same building that I live in, to sit in the same park that I'm sitting in. And in some cases, very similar to slavery days, we have to be verified by a Caucasian. Someone has to verify you. Someone has to account for you and say, oh, no, I know that Negro. That Negro's fine. That Negro can be here. That Negro just delivered my furniture. You can stop blocking them. You can stop detaining them. No, I sold that Negro that Mercedes-Benz. You don't have to accost them. They had the money, their check cleared. You have to prove that you have the money in the bank and the check is good. You need a Caucasian to say this is valid. This person is valid. All right? Still very similar. So what's so different now? It's still on site. I mean, let's think about it. Tamir Rice, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, okay, Breonna Taylor, Sandra Bland, okay, it's Philando Castile, Mike Brown. It's on site. You don't have your papers, can't be verified by a Caucasian. It's on site. Immediate aggression, thrown to the ground, assaulted, arrested, murdered, eliminated. It's on site. All of these are still true today. Okay? Still true today. The only difference between then and now is that we have cameras and we have social media. Praise God. Now we have a measure of global support. Now that everything has sort of bubbled over from the George Floyd murder, things have bubbled over. Now we have global support. We're just talking about moving forward to Juneteenth 2020, how things are different now. Okay? And we have unapologetic confrontation. And it is happening on a global scale where we are confronting these ideas, we are confronting these behaviors, we are confronting these laws, we are confronting the hidden racism that has been kept quiet and pushed under the rug. We're seeing countless numbers of celebrities and supposed leaders who have been exposed through their tweets or voicemails. I mean, it's coming out about just about everybody. Mark Wahlberg. I mean, just a ton of people. Howard Stern. Some of them are more obvious than others, but still. And Black Twitter is dragging them. Social media is dragging them and exposing them, you know. So these are the ways that are different now. And thank goodness for social media and cameras and just people being unapologetic about exposing and shining the light on these things. Also, what's different now is that with global support, been able to sort of galvanize and start the wheels a turning. There seems to be some traction. Without traction, you cannot have movement. Y'all know I'm from the South. I'm a country girl. And so you ever get stuck in the mud, you got to get a couple of logs or a couple of flat pieces of wood to shove up under the tire to get some traction. And you got to have some strong people behind the back of that truck and pushing it until you can get out of the mud a little bit and grab a little bit of grass and your tires can gain some traction, and then you can drive up out of that thing. And so we're getting a little bit of traction. And I say traction as opposed to movement because it denotes the process. So I think we've gotten traction on our way to some substantial movement. We've got the Breonna Taylor law, which is regarding no-knock warrants and just banning them altogether. And if I'm not mistaken, it's banning them in St. Louis, okay? And we've gotten the officer fired in that case. Just one officer, but I think it was 10 of them all together that entered her house without announcing themselves and guns ablazing. But still, no arrests. So this is what I mean when I say traction, but no substantial movement, right? There's some talk about passing a false complaint as a crime. You have all these, like I said, Kens and Karens that are calling the police falsely on African Americans in the hopes of using the police officers to exact a type of justice, on the person. But there's some talk of it, but it hasn't necessarily been solidified. And if it has, it's been, again, on a state level, on a local level, as opposed to being on a federal level. George Floyd, we've seen the officers in that case arrested. We've seen them fired, and we've seen charges being brought. Still, we have to kind of hold our breath on that because we don't know what's going to happen in jury selection. We don't know where the trial's going to be held. We don't know what the overall outcome will be on this. I mean, we've gotten to the point of court and hearings and rulings, and it has fallen just completely and utterly flat from there. And everybody's set free and let go, a slap on the wrist, and everybody goes home except the murdered. The brutally murdered. Okay. We've seen mayors sign proclamations and, decrees, and they have declared, governors and prominent leaders to make changes, to look into, to reform, to defund. We've gotten these sort of movements, i.e. tractionable items out there. Again, it does appear to be more on a local level as opposed to on a federal level. And we've seen it, Cory Booker, Kamala Harris, Stacey Abrams, even our own mayor here in Atlanta, Keisha Lance Bottoms. They've signed decrees. They're trying to fast track laws, even if it is on the local level, just trying to, put some things in place, have some movement on these issues because the protesters have got their backs up against the wall. the outcry is so great that we had to have some type of action, some type of traction. We had to at least run and go get the boards to put up under the tires. We had to at least look around for something that could be put up under the tires in order for there to even be a little bit of traction to get up out of this thing, to get us from being entrenched in this thing. Okay? We've had on a smaller scale, we've seen kneeling, and we've seen hugging and shaking of hands, and we've seen people cry and plead and post and paint and pontificate, all in a show of solidarity, which, hey, great, awesome, sounds good, I like it, but we could do better. We could do better. Yeah, you guys could do better. You could do more. But thanks for the solidarity, I guess. And it's been interesting. And I say interesting as opposed to exciting because I'm not excited just yet. I'm not at a place where I'm not so jaded that I'm not waiting for the proverbial foot. Now, do I think we would care about Juneteenth on this scale if it was, 2019, 2018? No. Do I think we would have cared about the George Floyd thing? I think so, yes. But would we have, been as fervent about it? Would we have been as consistent with our outrage about it? I think there's no way you looked at that video and you weren't, you forgot it easily. But when you're going to work, you're taking your kids to school, you got class, you got your part-time job, you got your husband and your wife you got to see about, you got elderly parents you got to see about, you got to cut the grass, you got to get food collected, cooked. You get busy, you forget. But because we're all at home, Juneteenth has been elevated in our minds, in our hearts, and on our lips. The death of Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, and countless others is indelibly ingrained in our brains because we were sort of corralled. We were in a place where we couldn't run from it. We couldn't look away from it. We couldn't be easily distracted from it. It's all anyone's ever talking about. If they're not talking about these particular people that were tragically murdered, we are talking about the circumstances surrounding it, the circumstances surrounding the officers. We're talking about protesting versus looting. It's on the vlogs, it's on YouTube, it's on social media. It's it's everywhere. It has a smell. It's palatable. It has a taste. It has a feeling. It makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. You have time to be infuriated. You have time to be disgusted. You have time to empathize. And this is true for African Americans as well as for white Americans, Indian Americans, Asian Americans. We all have the time right now to empathize and to see how it correlates in our own lives, how we've participated, how we sort of been complacent. We have time to go over all of these things, to reconcile all of these feelings, okay? And so that's a huge reason why Juneteenth 2020 is hitting a little bit different. That's a huge reason why these protests are different from the protests in Ferguson. Same movement, okay? Same movement. But this time we are paying attention. We're involved. We're engaged. we can't look away. Okay? So, in my opinion, another reason why I'm not excited, in my opinion, is that we need more. We need more than local legislation, you guys. We do. This is why voting is so important. We do need local legislation, but we need more than that. As a people, black people, we need federal laws on the books. Federal laws on the books. Okay? It needs to be written. And like the Emancipation Proclamation, it could be rode in on a horse and buggy. Okay? It can. You can send the troops in with the information, but we need the laws. We need this paperwork done. Okay? And we need reparations. My mama used to say people don't value what they don't pay for. Okay? And we've seen it. We've seen it with other individuals, humans that are in a particular religion. We've seen it with other humans that were native to this country, to these lands, and they were given reparations. Okay, I think reparations would be a good way to put a pin in it. Okay, because you find that there's a lot of sliding scales. People want you to get over it. People want you to move forward. People want you to follow peace. People want you to practice forgiveness. Have sympathy for the white tears. But I'm just telling you, if we hit them where it hurts, and we all know that the loss of life doesn't sting the same way as the loss of revenue, monies. Doesn't sting the same way. It does. It stings differently for me, but I value life over money. But we're just talking about, on a larger scale, we as a people, we need and we deserve reparations. Not only would it be beneficial for us as a people, but it would definitely be etched in the brains of those who had to come up off of that money. Come up off of that thing that you value. Okay? Come up off of it. Yeah. My daddy say bought cents is cents you never forget. Anything you pay for, you never forget. Okay, that's what in the country we call bought cents. Any cents you pay for, you never forget. Okay, pay for it. Pay for it. We need economic empowerment. I would get excited about economic empowerment. I would definitely get excited about reparations, but I would get excited about economic empowerment. So I'm gonna ask you guys a question. How many of you, outside of the Bible or a Bible, have something that was passed down to you through the generations? Okay, I know some people have land, that type of thing that they were fortunate enough to have passed down from their father's father. That's one of the reasons why a lot of you follow me. You know that I do Queen Sugar. One of the reasons why I'm so indelibly attached to Queen Sugar is because of just the history of the Bordelons and the land that they owned, that their father, Papa Bordelon, owned. It's rich. It's history rich, and you don't really see a lot of history rich items or stories from your great grandfather. I watch shows all the time, things like Law and Order. Law and Order, Criminal Intent is one of my favorite shows ever, and it's kind of hard to come by. I would love to have the whole Law and Order, Criminal Intent series, because I can watch it over and over again like the first time. But one of the things I noticed, they go into the homes and the murderers happen and they're investigating, and you find out that it's all the murder happened over a family heirloom, a brooch, or a dresser, furniture, art. African Americans, most of us don't have anything that was passed down, because, black people moved a lot. They had to move one way or another. Their homes were burned, things were stolen. They had to sell things to live, to make it, to make ends meet. And so a lot of people, for the most part, something that was passed down from generations ago would be a Bible, because it was something you could throw in your bag and hit the road. If you had to leave in the middle of the night, it's something you could grab and go. That's why most Bibles, that's where family pictures were kept and important information was kept, important numbers was written down. If you move forward into the the 40, the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, you still found that the Bible was a place where important papers were kept, because it's something that you could grab and go, and you didn't have to have necessarily a truck to move it. Okay, so economic empowerment, I think, is important. Something that we can call our own, something that we can pass down through future generations. Through economic empowerment, we're able to sort of right the cart, put the cart right side up, so to speak, and begin passing down a substantial amount of wealth and economic empowerment to the generations ahead. I was looking at a video about Leonard Davis, and I'm going to try to put the link in the description bar below. Leonard Davis has one of the largest collections of African American memorabilia. Now, this is your mammy art, your blackface, stepping, fetching, that type of thing. And he had some really profound things to say about how people feel when they come into his home and they see it. They're either, really fascinated, or they're incensed by it. And he said, this is, because of this collection, this is how we know it happened. It's proof. It's tangible proof that it happened, because a lot of times people say that wasn't true, or they change the narrative, they rewrite history, so on and so forth. So I thought that was very, very interesting. But when it comes to African American art, African American collectibles, a lot of times this is what you see. These images of enslavement, images of oppression, images of what people considered us to be, eating watermelon, big red lips, and black darkies. They had a little auction on the video where apparently African American banks, little handheld banks with pictures of, and they called it darkies. In the auction, they call it darky bank, darky with watermelon bank, darky with fishing bank. It's infuriating. But there's a point here that these are the things that have been brought forward from our past, as opposed to beautiful furniture that was hand carved by African American carpenters and things of this nature, beautiful garments and fabrics that were sewn and woven, textiles, by our people. We don't have a lot of that from 1800s, 1900s. We don't have a lot of it. We don't. And that we do have is offensive. offensive. You really have to sort of look at it in a different way, like Leonard Davis does, in order to even appreciate it, because it's so friggin' offensive. That's why you have this talk about Aunt Jemima and Uncle Ben, okay? Because those representations are negative. They are negative, okay? And with economic empowerment, our voice is valued. Our dollar is valued. If our dollar is valued, then our time is valued, our voice is valued, our interest is valued, our intellect is valued, our care, our empathy is valued. Right now, we're talking about the fact that Caucasians are weighing in on black issues, which is important, which is needed, but you don't ever see them come to say, hey, you as an African American, we'd love to hear you weigh in on this. They'd love to hear you weigh in on rap music, on sports, on dancing. But very rarely is our input pivotal to changing or moving the ball in any type of way. And this is just what I see. This is just my opinion. And it's what I've been thinking about today. I hope you guys enjoyed this little bit of commentary, just thoughts about where I am in this movement. I'm still, you guys know, I have to operate in a little bit of a different fashion because of a lot of things that are going on in my life right now. But I wanted you guys to know that I am here, and that I am watching, and that I am paying attention. And these are some of the things that I'm thinking about as it pertains to Juneteenth 2020. Why Juneteenth 2020 is hitting different for MizHoney this year. What it means to me, what emancipation means to me, what true liberation means to me. Okay, and how I'm processing the same information that you're seeing, I'm seeing, and this is how I'm processing it. I would love to hear from you guys. I would love for you guys to get in the comments down below and let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. And I would love for you all to commit to vote, commit to reading the laws that currently as they are, looking at all of the things that are being done to change the laws. President Obama has, with a team of leaders, has put together a comprehensive plan for police reform and community policing. Get informed, you guys. Get informed. More importantly, let us not look at these small bits of traction as movement. True movement will come with federal laws. True movement will come with reparations. True movement will come when we have economic empowerment. But that's just my thoughts. Little teaspoon of honey for you. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope that you guys will get down in the comments below and let me know what you think. I'd love to hear from you. And until next time, honeybees. Mwah, mwah, mwah. I holla.